Welcome to the Jacuzzi podcast. I'm Ed Baxter, and today we're joined by performing arts legend, Kerry Ellis. How are we doing, Kerry?
I'm good. That was a very nice intro. Thank you very much.
That's all right. Thank you for joining us. So we are currently sat in the Palace Theatre, Manchester, backstage in your dressing room. But first of all, it obviously didn't start like this in big theatres with thousands of people in the crowd. Can we just go back to how you got into performing arts?
Yeah, I mean, I was, as a child, I guess I was one of those kids where your parents put you into everything. I did loads of sport, I did lots of dancing, like horse riding, like they threw me at everything. But the dancing and singing seemed to stick, and it seemed to be the thing that I was most passionate about. And when you're kind of a little bit older and you're hitting early teens, there's just not enough time to do everything. And I'm sure with your swimming, if you're going to go for it, it has to take up your whole life. So it kind of did organically, and I loved it. I just loved the performing element. I loved being around music. I loved being around like-minded people, and being social with people. Being creative was important. And then it was, for me, there was just no other option. I didn't want to do anything else. So I went to a drama school, fortunately, in Surrey, called Lane Theatre Arts, where I trained for 3 years. And then I came out and went straight into the business and haven't stopped since. And it's been a few years. And here we are.
Yeah. So you talk there about once you decide to do that was your only option. You never thought, I might do this, I might do this. You were very much set. When was that? What kind of age did you make that decision?
I think I just always knew that I wanted to perform, and now I realise, as an adult and as a parent, I realise how fortunate I was to know what I loved, to know what I was passionate about, because I think it takes some people a long time to figure out what their journey is, or what they love, or what they want to do. And for me, it was a really clear path that I was going to be on stage. I didn't know the details, I didn't know what capacity, and I still kind of dabble in lots of different areas, but I knew that this was definitely the industry that I wanted to be in. So the only reason that it had a slight change when I was kind of 12 was because of literally I couldn't fit everything in. Yeah. And it was really difficult for me to give up. I swam a bit, I dabbled, and I did horse riding, and I did every sport imaginable at school, but there just wasn't the hours in the day. And I think you have to hone your craft a little bit and choose a side. Yeah,
for sure. And I think, you're saying there it takes a long time for often people to find their passion or the thing they want to dedicate their life to. But, a lot of people don't ever find that at any point, do they?
They don't. And that's okay. And some people, you look at somebody like Bradley Cooper, who was a tradesman, and then and suddenly is like this superstar actor. He came into it really late. I think he was kind of late 30s. So it doesn't. I don't think there's any right or wrong way. I think for me though, especially being a parent, it's really important for me to instill in my kids that do something you love. Whether that changes or not, that's fine. But do things that you love doing, because life is too precious, and we should enjoy our jobs. There's nothing worse than getting up and going to a job that you don't like every day.
I think as well, when you enjoy it, you do better at it.
I think so. Yeah.
If it's something it doesn't excite you in the morning, you don't want to put your passion into it, do you?
Yeah, exactly. You have to get up and go and do it. So yeah. There are those times where it is difficult, even doing something you love. There's times when it's, I don't want to get up and I don't want to put my tap shoes on, or I don't want to go for a run, or I don't want to sing, or but the minute I start doing it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is why I do it. I love it.
Yeah. So after that moment of kind of deciding, dropping, I guess, other sports or other activities that you were doing, 1998, I think, was your first professional performance. Is that correct?
Kind of. Yeah.
So what's changed, in those years from then to now? The excitement, nerves, pressure. What's different now compared to that first time doing it professionally?
Different challenges. I guess my first big West End show was My Fair Lady, and that was around 2000. That was the first big thing. Yeah. I'd done pantos and other shows and before that, but that was the first kind of big moment, and I was an understudy, and I got to play the role of Eliza Doolittle. I was covering for Martine McCutcheon, who was a big superstar at the time. She'd just come out of EastEnders. She just had a record deal. She was on the front of every magazine, and she was doing this musical, and I was the understudy, and she got poorly, and on I went, and it was... I look at it now, and I see how big that moment was, and I remember the announcement going out, and everyone saying, or the stage management saying, tonight, the role of Eliza Doolittle will not be played by Martine McCutcheon, and you hear 2,500 people say, the role will be played by Kerry Ellis, and you kind of hear this kind of silence and rustle, and at the time I was fearless, because I think I had that kind of, not arrogance of youth, but I had that confidence of being 20 or whatever I was. Now if I did it, I think I'd be terrified, because I just know so much more.
Ignorance is bliss.
Ignorance is bliss. But then I think now, obviously, I have more experience, and I'm the other side of the story now. It's me that's playing the roles and has the opportunity to go on there and play that role. And if I am poorly, it's me that has to make that call and say, I'm really sorry. But I think I still have the same excitement, the same nerves, the same commitment, but I just have more experience.
Yeah, for sure. So, you talked about that moment, when you took over that main role. It sounds quite defining. But if you, think of that 20-year or so journey of, doing this professionally, is there a period or is there a moment that was particularly hard and made you question, is this, although it's your passion, is this the right thing I want to be still doing?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. Yes, I found Wicked was probably the toughest show I'd ever done.
Okay.
It broke me vocally, as I think it does everybody. And I don't think I ever thought, I'm giving up, this is it. But I found it really difficult. I found that kind of relentless waking up going, oh, I'm tired, can I sing this? You're kind of working on injured muscles, and that's tough. You get no respite to recover and repair. So I found that really difficult, but it wasn't enough to stop me. If anything, it made me more driven to find the next challenge and to find the joy again.
Is that something you feel like you need in a show? Do you need to feel like it's a challenge rather than, I can do this really well and it's fairly easy for me? Do you feel like you need a
little
challenge?
bit? Yeah, I think so. I think that's why I like to find variety, and it's why I don't do show after show anymore.
Yeah.
I do a bit of music, and I write books, or I do podcasts, or I do whatever, just because I like to challenge myself. I like to kind of do something different, and because otherwise I think you progress as a person, as a performer, if you just keep pushing yourself and keep challenging.
What is this show that we're doing right now? We're not doing it. You're doing
you
right now.
You might be tonight. You're in my room. This is Anything Goes, and I play Reno Sweeney, which is just a joyous role. I get to put my tap shoes on, which I haven't done for 20 odd years. I do lots of dancing, and I get to sing classic songs like I Get a Kick Out of You, You're the Top, Anything Goes. And we're on tour at the moment, and we're about to go to the Barbican for the whole of the summer. And it's just been so much fun. I've loved it.
So is that the challenge, the tap, doing something you've not done for a long time?
Oh, yeah.
Do you see the challenge? Where's the challenge in this show?
Oh, there were so many. The tap, the dancing. I mean, I'm in my 40s now, and I haven't danced like that since my early 20s. So up in my fitness, that was really important. Before I did this show, I was starting to run more. I was going to the gym. I was watching what I was eating. So everything was to get me as fit as I can, so that I could do those routines and then sing at the end of it and not be like, half it. And also standing next to an ensemble of young, fit performers, to be worthy of being there was really important to me. And also the expectation. I haven't done a musical for a couple of years, so people were coming to see me do it. So you need to be show fit. You need to be ready. And the challenge of something like this as well, I have a young family, so leaving my family is tricky, but we weigh up each job that comes in and make the right decision for us at that time.
The pressure you talked about there, people are now coming to watch you, whereas before, you felt like people would come to watch other people, and if you were there, almost it was a disappointment to see you in some of the roles you did. From my world as an athlete, when you go out and perform, you do it for yourself or your coaches. But when you walk out there, you've got 2.5, often more, 1,000 people who have paid and want a flawless show. How do you deal with that pressure? Do you feel pressure in that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, yes, but for me, it's like your job is to be there and to be the best that you can. But we tell stories. We transport people. We give them that kind of escapism for a couple of hours. So the pressure is just delivering the best show that you can and making people feel something and giving them that experience that it could be that person's very first time they've ever seen a musical, and you want to give them that experience. And that's always been part of who I am, part of what I do. When I do kind of my solo shows, it's the same thing. I just want to make people feel something and give them a memory that when they go away, they go, oh, I don't know, I remember that song, or I that song played at my wedding, or whatever it is. You want to connect with people.
Do you put a lot of pressure on yourself to deliver that for people?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. It sounds like you do.
But I don't know. I feel like it's not only my job, but I think because I've been doing it for so many years now, and like you say, people do come to see me do a show or come to see me in a musical. So there is that pressure of they expect something. They expect you to belt out those big notes. They expect you to, to look good and to be on form and to make them laugh. And so there is a pressure, but we are inhuman, so you can only do what you can do.
Yeah. You've talked about some of the shows you've done. Wicked. You've done We Will Rock You, Les Miserables. You've done so many. Cats. Everything. How do you fit everything in? How do you do it? You've even recorded studio albums between doing shows. How do you do it?
I don't know.
Because passion can only take you a certain amount, right? So loving what you do can only take you so far. And there's got to be...
Yeah, don't get me wrong, it doesn't come without its difficulties. Balancing a family, being a wife, being a mother, being a daughter, being a...
Yeah. And
then having this career, it does come with challenges. But it's always been that way. For me, I've been a performer since I can remember. The other things have come into my life and I've managed to, I don't know, to just fit it in. You just do. I think there's no option.
Yeah. I think that's often the way, isn't it, with people where, you look at someone and you think, how are they often doing this? And you speak to someone like yourself who, we're saying, how do you do this?
Yeah.
You've got an option. You're saying you have to.
Yeah, and also I'm fortunate to be in, I love my job. I have a family. I'm very fortunate to have 2 healthy boys. My husband is so supportive, and I couldn't do it without any of those elements. My parents, my in-laws, they all help. So I am fortunate to have, this kind of network of support around me as well.
So, you talked there about a long time away from home and, missing family and things like that. What's the longest show period, I guess, you've ever done?
Been away.
Yeah.
Probably this. Because when the boys were little, I used to just take them with me. When Brian May and I toured our Acoustic by Candlelight tour, and I think we did one after that. They were in carry cots, so I could just take them everywhere, and they'd just sit in the dressing room, and that was it. Yeah. But now they're at school, and they're they've got their own little lives going on. It's more difficult. So now I try not to go away for long periods of time. This was slightly different because I knew it was only going to be a short period, and then we were going into London. So this was quite unusual, but I just try to not have months out from them, because I don't want to miss that either. I don't want to miss them growing up and developing their own personalities and passions as well.
Yeah, of course. So what you do is quite it's a high level thing. We've talked about the pressure. We've talked about you feeling like you want to deliver the best show. And how I guess it sounds like you feel like you need to do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
You need to be, as you said, a mother, a wife, a daughter. How do you cope with that? How do you take time for yourself? How do you do it?
I run.
Really?
I run. I exercise. I think it's the older I get, the more important that becomes to me. Not only physically, I feel like I need to take care of myself, health-wise, to keep up with my boys, to be around for my boys, to continue my career. And also mentally, like to go for a run, go and do a 5K or whatever. I did 20K this morning. Oh my God!
That's
it's a bit of a result for me. I've been working towards it, and it's a bit of a thing. But But for me, it's a headspace to go out. Like I can't check my phone. I can't speak to anyone because I'm like out of breath. I get a bit of fresh air. Get to see where I am, and it's a moment that I get for me, and that's quite hard to get that in sometimes. I can only relate to somebody like yourself when that takes over. Like it has to take over, but it's almost for me it almost feels like it's not a selfish thing, but I have to put it in, but it feels like I don't know, it's a bit of a treat in a weird way.
Do you ever feel selfish for doing the job you do?
Yeah, I do have that kind of mum guilt, when I leave my kids and my family. It is a constant battle. It is because you want to be in two places. I love what I do, and it's such a big part of who I am. But also, I'm a mum, so to be away from my boys, and if you get that call just before I go on stage and they're upset or whatever, it's like, oh my God. Yeah. But I think it's also really important for them to see that I'm doing a job that I love and to do something that, that you're passionate and inspired by, and hopefully that they will
almost inspiring them to try and find something.
To do the same thing. And the same with the exercise and the fitness. They see that my husband is super active as well, and they see that we try and live healthy lifestyles, and hopefully they will, follow on and do that.
Yeah.
And not eat chicken nuggets anymore.
It's quite funny to hear you say that, because the more people we speak to on this podcast, we have people like yourself who do performing arts, we have people who have been in TV and show business and athletes, and often that selfishness is always there. So from my world, some of the swimmers I work with now who go to an Olympics or things like that, their families are saying, can we do this, and they just say no. You
miss so much.
Yeah, you do.
Well, I missed my cousin's wedding like a couple of weeks ago because I was doing this, and you do miss out. But I think that's the difference of when you then go into like an elite environment. You have to make those sacrifices.
Yeah. Do you see it as a sacrifice?
Yes. Yes, I do. I mean, I think I've always done it. So for me, it's kind of, I don't see it as a bigger problem as the people around me now. I can say, yes, I'm gutted. I didn't go to my cousin's wedding. I didn't get to be there but for me, it's not a question. It's like, well, but my job has to come first, which is really bad. But I think you don't get to where you're at unless you commit fully.
Yeah, 100%. Do you, when you leave a show like this, or, we've talked about how long you're going to be doing these shows for, when you go home, is it hard coming back to normal life?
That's the reason why I started up my podcast in the lockdown, because I wanted to talk about that exact thing. And I talk about it with Brian all the time, about these incredible highs that we have. Yeah. And these, this adrenaline and this, you're celebrated, and then when you go home, it's completely different, and it's a big adjustment, and you're thrilled to be there. And also for your family, they've got to adjust because they've been without you doing their thing, and then you kind of come in like a bomb goes off, and it always takes a little bit of adjustment. And Brian talks about it a lot, and he has it on an extreme scale. He's doing like a huge arena tour at the moment, and he's like a god, and then he goes home and he's doing his own washing, and that must be really a difficult adjustment. And I set up my podcast in the first lockdown to talk to people about that exact thing, and so many people deal with it. So many people go through mental adjustments because of these highs and these lows, and it was really interesting.
Do you feel like you can almost go to a bigger emotional range than a lot of people you speak to? or a lot of people you know? Because a lot of people I speak to who go to these huge, you know, events where if it's a performance or, you know, something where there's a huge emotional response, you also go up there, but you also
come down
hit
is bigger.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yes and no. I feel for me, because of the industry that I'm in, that I can almost get it out in the show that I'm doing, because it's so emotional. I feel like I can get rid of that energy doing the show.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's because the people I speak to, or the people I know the most, you know, in sport, I guess, you know, you have this almost, it's there and it's waiting, you can't let that emotion go.
Yeah.
Whereas I think that's quite it's a very interesting thought, you know, for myself to think you can actually let that all go.
Absolutely,
and,
yeah.
know, if you are in sport and you let that go, your performance is not great.
Yeah.
You know, if you
for
let
me,
all
it's
that
better.
emotion, that's it's really interesting to hear that. But it's really cool to hear that you know, have you spoken to people in other industries and things like that on your podcast where you felt
a little bit. Yes, a little bit. Kind of within the same industry, but I've spoken to like directors and writers, and they have similar. I guess they all have similar outlays, as in they can be emotional in whatever they're doing. So if it's like, I spoke to Don Black, and he could get rid of his emotion through his songs or through his writing or through his books. So I feel like we have an outlet to get rid of that emotion. I'm perhaps not emotional enough then in my everyday life.
Oh, really?
Because I think I perhaps suppress it a bit.
Oh, really? Do you do that consciously or subconsciously?
Not really. Yeah, not really. My husband always jokes that I'm quite hard and I'm quite, you know, tough. But I think it's because I'm just used to dealing with lots of situations. And like I said, I can get rid of that emotion in a show that I'm doing. It's because I'm playing all these different emotions and playing a character, so I can let that out. So I kind of almost get rid of it. And then when I go home, I can kind of deal with it a bit more.
So when you go home after, you know, a big set of shows or anything like that, how do you adjust? How do you have your own time? Obviously, we know you've got a jacuzzi.
I sit in the hot tub.
Perfect.
I do.
What else is it? So, you know, we know you exercise. We know you spend time in jacuzzi. Is there anything else you like to do?
Just be with my family, be with the kids. We used to love to travel loads, and we're starting to do that now again, which is just amazing. But the jacuzzi through the especially through the second half of the lockdown was a game changer. It was a lifeline to us because the kids loved it, but we loved it. It brought. My husband and I would sit and chat in there, whereas you sit at home and life takes over, you know, you're always doing stuff. Whereas if we would the kids would go to bed and we would sit in there at night and have a glass of wine, we'd actually sit and talk to each other, which you don't
get time to do usually.
You don't do, because you put the telly on or you put a Netflix on or you're doing dinner or whatever it is. But that was a bit of a lifeline for us, and the kids just thought, you know, we've got a pool in the garden, a warm pool.
No diving.
No diving in that one. Oh my god. Yeah. So we try eat out. We love, you know, nice restaurants and stuff. But simple things: walk the dog, be with the kids.
Simple life.
Yeah.
So one thing I'm always really interested in people like yourself who do a lot and are really busy and have had really successful careers, is if you take that away, if you take the shows away. Who are you? Oh, who is Kerry Ellis?
Oh, God. Well, the lockdown was really interesting because obviously we couldn't perform. I did a couple of those horrendous things, you know, from Instagram where you sang at home. It was just awful and hideous and never to be repeated.
That's not who you are.
That's definitely not who I am. However, there was parts of it that I enjoyed having taken away. I enjoyed not having the pressure. And it pushed me into other directions. So I did things like I wrote my book and I did my podcast. I started talking to people, which I really liked. I really enjoyed that. But then there was a big void. There was a massive void. And James would my husband would joke at me going, you need to go and do a show. You're like, it's almost like you need to get rid of that energy.
Yeah.
And he was so right. Because at the minute anything came up, I was just chomping at the bit to go and do something that I probably would have said no to before, but I was just desperate to get out there and do. It's such a huge part of who I am. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's I don't know is the answer. If it was taken away, I'd struggle.
Yeah,
massively.
put you on the spot there.
I would struggle.
Yeah.
Hugely, and I did in the lockdown. I really did. I think everybody did in some way, but performers especially, because they couldn't do what they do.
Yeah,
So,
and I think it's like what you were saying before. It's not just a job where you can kind of stay quite stable. You let so much emotion out when you're used to expressing that level of emotion. You've got nowhere to put it, have you?
Yeah. I mean, we enjoyed being at home as a family as well, because we don't always have all that time together, which was lovely. I could have done without the homeschooling, but the time was actually really precious, and time we won't get back. That when they were little, and that was precious. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
But I was ready to when this came up, I was like, yes, absolutely. And it's gone so crazy because there wasn't anything for a couple of years. It's now really busy. So I think now it's about finding that balance of home and work life balance that everybody strives towards, don't they?
Yeah, for sure. So you talked about the podcast. You talked about the fact you've written a book. Is there anything else you're currently working on that's outside of what you're doing tonight?
I've got a new album coming out in September. Which is almost finished.
When did you have time for that one?
I know, it's mental. But I was doing it through rehearsals for this when we were in London. I've been back and done a few days on my days off, but that's almost done. So that's really exciting. And then there's concerts that will take me through to the end of the year that I normally do, the big Christmas ones, and a few with the Queen music and an orchestra. So it's busy.
Yeah.
It's good.
So we always round off the podcast with asking our guests, 3 tips from their kind of area. So in what you do, the performing arts, you have to be very confident to go out on stage and do what you do in front of thousands of people. But also, obviously, that translates into everyday life, I would assume, in some respects.
Kind of. I mean, I'm a confident person, but I'm not kind of. My husband is a lot more confident socially than I am. I'm a lot more kind of sit back and just let everything happen in front of me. But again, I think it's because I can be someone else when I do this. It's almost like you put on your costumes and you put on your mask and off you go. Yeah. And that gives me confidence.
Oh, okay. So if we were talking about 3 tips for people to be more confident if they wanted to go on stage or not, what would your tips be?
I would say, first of all, don't worry about what anyone else thinks. I think we live in a society now where everything is questioned, and with social media, we're constantly looking and comparing ourselves. So don't worry about anyone else, and don't engage in anybody else's negativity. I would say trust in yourself, because your belief will get you through.
One more. Do you want to call husband?
Yeah, so
get him on the line.
I just say have fun. Like I said earlier, life is short, and we have to take every moment. And we've all had such a crazy couple of years. It's really made us, I think, us especially, think about what's important. Do something you love. Be around the people you love. Don't waste time with anything else, because there's not enough time.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for joining us. It's been awesome, and good luck tonight. Hope the show goes well.
I wish I had my jacuzzi. I could go and sit in before I do the show.
No, thank you for coming on. It's been awesome.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for watching this episode of the Jacuzzi podcast. Remember, for more like this, make sure you subscribe and follow, and we'll see you on the next one.